It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
If you drive a car, truck, SUV, or vehicle of any kind, you need Get Upside, the free gas app that pays you cash back for every gallon of gas you buy. That's right. With the free Get Upside gas app, you can get up to 25 cents a gallon cash back every time you buy gas. Nearly 3 million people have earned cash back with Get Upside just for buying gas.
I always use Get Upside. Some months I make $200 to $300.
I love getting money back for things I use every day. It's just free money for buying gas.
There's no catch. It's simple. And you get your cash back right away.
Download the free Get Upside app now in the App Store or Google Play to save up to 25 cents per gallon when you buy gas. Use promo code SALE for a 25 cent per gallon bonus on your first tank. That's up to 50 cents a gallon on your next fill up. You can cash out anytime to PayPal or an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Earn cash back on gas on every fill up. Just download the free Get Upside app and use promo code SALE for a 25 cent per gallon bonus on your first tank. That's code SALE.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up and welcome to another Thursday edition of Locked On NBA. I am one of your hosts, Jackson Gatlin, host of Locked On Rockets. He is Matt Moore, senior NBA writer for the Action Network and co-host of Locked On Nuggets. And we are here today to do NBA Stock Market, our fifth installment of NBA Stock Market, the Central Division, coming up a little bit later in the episode. But first, we have to dive into the news coming by way of Minnesota. Gerson Rosas no longer in charge of the operation up there. Can we get one more sad howl, Matt?
Ow!
This was such a, crazy story to drop in the middle of the day, finding out Rosas is out as the president of basketball operations for the T-Wolves, going into what would have been his third year up there, kind of trying to remodel that franchise. And frankly, the details of the story, there's a whole lot going on here. From which angle do you want to approach this from first, Matt?
Don't take the person that you're having an extramarital affair with as a member
a consensual
here we go, adult relationship with, as a member of a professional sports organization to another game of a professional sports organization in the same town. That's like, just don't date down. That's not ever going to work. That's just not an appropriate relationship. If you're dating someone who has less power than you in an organization, but under no circumstances should you also do that. It's just a mess. Look, the Athletics report from John Krasinski and Shams Charania, it outlines in detail all of the stuff.
A lot. It's a big report. I was like halfway through reading it, and I was like glancing. I'm like, I still have another half of to go on this article. There's so much in there.
I'll tell you, when you have that kind of detail this early, it means that people were very willing to tell you exactly what the problems were with Rosas. And now,
and based on a lot of the reporting, it sounds like there was some, disgruntled, employees, some, there was smoke coming out of Minnesota already leading up to this. And so the Athletic had already kind of started doing their due diligence, their digging, reaching out to employees within the organization. And like you said, they were very willing to divulge exactly what the type of atmosphere was, what the culture was there. And it sounds like a lot of people were really unhappy with how Rosas was handling things up there.
Yeah. Bear in mind that Rosas had left the Rockets earlier to go to the Mavericks, stayed there for about a fortnight, and then that did not work, and he was gone again, back to Houston. I think Rosas comes from a school of thought that if you are not used to it and you are not in line with those kind of concepts, that you're probably going to have a lot of issues with. And we knew that he was going to be he had reshaped a lot of the front office kind of with his people, but I don't think that there was maybe enough. And at the core of it, even if they were his people, they just weren't happy. There was a lot of, when I asked around about it, the conversation was just everybody is really dissatisfied and on edge there. And that was before everything else that happened with this extramarital affair with a staffer that came to light. I think it's unfortunate. There's a bunch of things that's unfortunate about this. Like, that's an inappropriate relationship, but dragging that into the public eye is going to put more attention on the woman that probably doesn't deserve to be brought into this kind of spotlight. It obviously is humiliating for Rosas' family. That's a bummer. And also, it kind of becomes clear reading the Athletic article that if the Timberwolves had thought, like, if everyone had liked him and he had gotten along with everyone, this probably goes away. But because of the overall atmosphere, this was kind of the final straw, is a little bit how it's described. I don't know whether that's fair or not, but that's how it kind of comes across. Sanchin Gupta takes over, another person from the Daryl Morey tree in Houston. Doesn't necessarily change the direction. There was some reports today that they were going to be looking to do a full search for somebody else. Jake Fisher from Bleacher Report reported that they've got interest in Elton Brand, which that doesn't make any sense. Like, you just dug yourself out of the whole good old boys, we're going to play basketball the way basketball is meant to be played, and realign towards a little bit more of a professional modern approach. And now you're going to go the other way. It's a mess. It's a mess, and it's a bummer. And on top of it all, honestly, Jackson, from a basketball standpoint, like, most of these issues are personal issues for Rosas' family and for Rosas and for the Wolves, etc. From a basketball standpoint, for me, the most concerning thing is that Karl Anthony Towns immediately tweeted WTF. Like, him,
which he wasn't included in the process, right? He likely, had his Woj and Shams notifications on, and he's, sifting through Twitter, playing video games, minding his own business, doing whatever he's doing. And he's getting notifications, finding out that the president of basketball operations is fired. And he's like probably reading through this story instead of finding out from the organization itself, which is just, that's not how you handle your franchise guy. Like, it's just not.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like that. That's what I think is kind of surprising and if anything, I think the bigger problem is just, this is another setback. Maybe Gupta can just like pick up and go. There was stuff in there about how Gupta had looked for another job, that he had been approached by the Rockets to go back there with a pay increase, but it wasn't necessarily promotion, and Rosas blocked it. And so, like,
the reason being because it was too close to the draft, apparently. Yeah. And his defense of that decision was that supposedly that close to the draft, he couldn't let an employee with such, critical information of the, goings on of the T-Wolves organization go to a competitor, and, even in the Western Conference, but then tried to kind of backpedal from that and say later on that, immediately after the draft process had concluded and the offseason plans had taken place, he then granted Gupta the, opportunity to go interview and, pursue opportunities with other teams. But by then the Rockets position, had been, I don't know if the offer had been formally rescinded or not, but, we can assume it was probably no longer on the table at that point.
So now, I mean, you hope that maybe they're keeping, Gupta is very much behind, Chris Finch, who I think is going to be an excellent NBA coach. I liked his approach at the end of last season. I was ready to be pretty high on the Wolves. I was buying Wolves stock when we did our draft, our stock report on them. This seems like another unstable moment in what's been such an unstable franchise.
There's part of me that does wonder, and I want to throw this one out there, and it's kind of one of those, like, I don't want to say it's not quite tinfoil hat theory-esque, whatever, but, immediately when I heard about this news, I immediately started thinking, okay, well, obviously with the T-Wolves being in the mix for Ben Simmons and whatnot, being the odds-on favorite to land him at this point, via the Vegas betting lines and whatnot, I was wondering if maybe either Rosas was the guy who was pushing so strongly for Simmons, and maybe there was like frictional organizational pushback on him wanting that move, or vice versa. Maybe he was against wanting Simmons and the rest of the organization really wanted to push for it. And maybe that's where some of this decision came from. But then this whole article kind of came out, and that kind of illuminated everything. But I wonder if that might also still have played a smaller bit in that, with everything that's been going on with all those rumors, if maybe there was some internal friction about what direction the franchise truly wants to go in, whether they do want to leverage themselves into Ben Simmons possibly.
I don't think so. What this sounds like to me, because here's the deal. It was reported that Rosas was at meetings this morning. Ramona Shelburne reported he was doing basketball meetings this morning.
Yeah.
And Towns didn't know that it was happening. the fact that there was like talk of dissension doesn't mean that there was actually a talk that he was going to be replaced / removed. If this was a basketball related decision, there would have been a lot more smoke rather than how it came out, which was sudden and abrupt, and ownership came down to deliver that news. Glenn Taylor himself, still the owner for a while longer before A-Rod takes over. From that perspective, I think the big key, like if you told me that an owner came into the office, met directly, they released a statement which did not thank that person for their contributions, and that person was fired very abruptly and suddenly, that caught everyone, including the franchise star, off guard, my immediate reaction is the organization is moving to protect itself from legal liability. So that to me is like where I immediately go to, is like there's some sort of concern of an impropriety here that leaves them open to liability, and they're maneuvering around that. And the toxic culture that's described, I will say that, you know, maybe we'll hear more about it in the coming days. There's a toxic culture that's described, but it's not really outlined in terms of what that meant for people. It's just described as like, there was a toxic culture, people were unhappy. And then also he's having this extramarital affair with a staffer, and that was inappropriate.
And there was an anonymous source that also, I believe, highlighted the fact that it's kind of unfair to also pin all the blame necessarily on Rosas. He was obviously, you know, the guy who brought in this new culture, this newfound way of doing things, which wasn't, you know, to the liking of some of the, you know, existing or current employees there, and trying to, you know, do things his way, right? His way or the highway. And then it was exacerbated by obviously the pandemic that we're all dealing with, right? And so it was already kind of, it wasn't the quote in the article was great. It wasn't the initial fire, but it was, you know, the fuel to the flame or something to that effect. And I thought that was an important element to highlight, because maybe, again, you know, if one of these variables is just removed, right? You remove one thing, and then maybe it's okay. Like you remove the impropriety, and then maybe you're just like, okay, yeah, they'll sweep it under the rug. I don't know. It's a very jarring situation, especially for an organization to have to go through the majority of their offseason under the stewardship of a gentleman like this, and then to have to can him right before the NBA season starts. That's a little rough for the T-Wolves too. Like you said, another setback for the T-Wolves organization, unfortunately.
Before we go break, I have a question for you.
Ooh, okay. What you got?
Andrew Wiggins, via the San Francisco Chronicle, is still refusing to get the vaccine. There's obviously a mandate in the Bay Area for people in those arenas to be vaccinated, which means he would not be able to play in the home games. They brought in a doctor that said was reportedly understanding of vaccine hesitancy, and described what that doctor had seen from dying patients, etc. And Wiggins was, quote, unmoved. I think we're seeing out something similar play out in Brooklyn, given the comments of Sean Marks the other day. I'm beginning to wonder if this story is something that we've been like, this could get a little weird. And now I'm wondering, as we approach days until the official start of training camp, most teams have already begun open runs. If this isn't going to wind up being a bigger story with impacts to actual rotation players, like key members and stars on certain teams, because of increasing mandates for the vaccine.
What was your question in there though? You didn't quite tee me up with an actual question. I think I agree with you, and I think we just, you know, on our
my
very
question
last show
is,
together.
what do you think? Do you think is this bad?
That's okay. That's, you know, I'll give you that.
Is Andrew Wiggins not getting vaccinated bad? Jackson, your thoughts?
Yes, it's a terrible, it's terrible. It's a bad look for the league. It's not great overall. I think that ultimately we discussed this ad nauseum last week. The fact that there are players, you know, unfortunately, that are, you know, not following what the science says, and, you know, not caring for their fellow man about the vaccine. And I know I'm going to, you know, upset some people by saying this, but frankly, with where we're at right now, with the hundreds of thousands of people that have died from this, like, just get the vaccine and go on with it. And if it's mandated by the league, if that's what they want to do, or I apologize if it's not mandated by the league, but if it's mandated by the state that you're playing in and you're going to have to get the vaccine, then yeah, he's going to have to sit out games. And I feel like there's going to get to a point where the league might have to step in and do something if it's going to be some weird roster situation where he's not playing home games, but he is playing road games. Are the Warriors going to be okay with that? I think it's going to brew to a point where the league is going to have to step in and, either issue a mandate saying that all the players do have to be vaccinated, or something else that says you can't sit out half the game. I don't know. It's going to be very strange, and the league's going to have to address it in some capacity, I think, is what's going to happen.
We're like 4 days from the start of training camp and 28 days from the start of the season, and things are already this messy. Just messy drama always in the NBA, Jackson.
Always. It's the greatest reality TV show in existence. I will stand by that notion till the end of time, till the end of my days. But with that, we are going to dive into next our NBA stock market analysis of the Central Division. And we're going to get there after a quick message from our friends over at DirecTV, because look, does this sound familiar at all, right? I'm sure you've heard this before, but you've got one device that lets you catch the game. You've got another that's letting you stream your favorite shows, smart TV, little, Roku box or something. You got sports highlights on your phone, and you've got your neighbor's best friends and logins for all the other good stuff, right? Let me tell you about a simple way to get all the entertainment that you love without the hassle, a great way to finally get your TV together. It's called DirecTV Stream, and it brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes, no more need to buy another device ever again, and the best part, there's no annual contract. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at directtv.com. That's directtv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package.
We're also brought to you today by Sleeper. In 2018, the fantasy sports experts at Sleeper realized that fantasy basketball was broken. Games were being won and lost based on whose players had more scheduled games that week. It made no sense and required very little strategy. So in 2020, Sleeper released a brand new way of playing fantasy basketball. It's called Game Pick, and it's only available on Sleeper. In Game Pick, owners pick a single game per week for each starter to count towards their team's total score, ensuring an even number of games played between opponents. The days of losing because your opponent's players simply had more scheduled games to play in that week are over. The days of mindless daily busy work are over. The days of giving up halfway through the season because of that busy work, also over. In Game Picks, you pick one game per week for each player based on the matchups, home versus away, the defensive ranking, all the stuff that makes fantasy basketball fun. All that adds up to a more strategy and less busy work. Whether you prefer redraft, keeper, or dynasty, Game Picks has you covered. Sleeper, crack the fantasy basketball code. If you play fantasy basketball, if you prefer building out a weekly strategy versus daily busy work, you're going to love Game Picks. Download the Sleeper app and start a league with your friends today. You won't be disappointed. We'll be right back on Locked On NBA.
And continuing on here at Locked On NBA Thursday, he is Matt Moore. I am Jackson Gatlin, and we are diving into NBA stock market, our 5th edition of this. We've got one more to go after this, and right now we're diving into the Central Division, and who better than to start with the reigning NBA champion Milwaukee Bucks. Now I'm going to start with a bit of a hot take here, Matt. I'm torn between selling and holding the Bucks. I haven't been able to talk myself into buying Bucks right now. And that's just, I'm going to tee up the conversation there, and I'll let you, share your initial thoughts. And obviously we're going to break it all down and figure out why we feel our respective ways.
Well, I'm actually really interested in your thoughts. So if you're going to sell them outright, what is the thought process for selling them? We do this versus expectation. So the expectation is 55 plus wins and a top 2 team in the Eastern Conference and a title contender. Do you agree that you're selling them based off of those principles?
I'm selling that. Yeah, but I'm selling them because I'm shorting them on that final spot there as far as title contention, because I think that if they run into a healthy Brooklyn Nets team, which I think that's the question mark, right? Is had the Nets been healthy this past go around, are we talking about a Bucks title? Or are we talking about the Bucks getting bounced in 6 possibly? I mean, they didn't get quite a fair shake against, or I apologize, the Nets didn't get a fair shake against the Bucks. And frankly, I like their offseason additions. I think that they are in a good spot. I think they're going to still be a top 2 team in the East. I think they're clearly, the favorites right there next to the Nets, but I far prefer the Nets over them. And I think that's where the kind of stopgap is for me, where even if they meet the Nets in the conference finals, I'm going Nets over Bucks 10 times out of 10. And so that's why I feel like I have to sell them, because as to expectations, I don't think they're getting back to the finals.
So I love this question. I love this idea. And because like you're representing, I think a lot of people are in your boat. Like the Nets are favored. They're a heavy favorite in the East. They're a heavy favorite to win the title, etc. Everyone talks about Kevin Durant's foot on the line and all the injuries. And that's absolutely true. I have a stat for you. You ready?
Yes.
Okay. Overall, in the Nets series versus the Bucks, the Nets had a 107.7 defensive rating overall in that series, which is pretty good. Like, for a team that doesn't really play much defense and doesn't have defensive personnel, 107.7 is pretty good. If I told you that the Nets were on the verge of winning that series with defense, does that sound right to you?
It doesn't. And I almost feel like I know where you're going with this, where like, correct me if I'm wrong, are you going the route that says like, because they didn't have Kyrie and Harden for parts of the games, that they were a better defensive team?
No. I'm more trying to say
okay.
We take that 7-game sample and we want to treat it as definitive. But this is Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park. It's chaos theory. If we put Kyrie and Harden in that series, everything is different. We don't know how that plays out. We just don't. But here's what we do know. To start that series, the Nets were consistently playing great defense and holding the Bucks to extremely low offensive performances, oftentimes on just terrible shooting, and their biggest kind of pressure point on Giannis was Blake Griffin. Do you think Blake Griffin can stop Giannis Antetokounmpo, Jackson?
Not if his life depended on it.
Over the last 4 games of that series, the Bucks had a 112 offensive rating. They still didn't even play that well, and they still had a 112 offensive rating over the final 4 games of that series. Here's like my read on it. The Nets were extremely fortunate not to be down Kyrie and Harden, and were held up essentially, not just by KD's performance, but by their defense getting stops, which we know their defense sucks. So if we know their defense sucks, and that's how they were in that series, then the precept of, well, the Nets would have almost beat them anyway, we can throw that out because we don't expect that to happen again. I especially don't expect that to happen again, given that the Bucks just went, like, they got through. They broke through. They won the title. All that tension and pressure is gone. Now they've got a lot more confidence. They know how to play together. We've seen this from championship teams before. They play better after winning because they figured it out and they no longer have that tension and doubt. They know they can do this. And so I'm not saying necessarily that they're going to beat the Bucks. I'm not saying they should be favored versus or they're going to beat the Nets, or they should be favored versus the Nets. But I do think that if we really dig into this stuff and we look at how basketball was played, we dig into how that series went, it's not indicative necessarily of what's going to happen in the future. You can't just take that series and go, well, they almost beat him without Kyrie and Harden. So with Kyrie and Harden, that's not how basketball works. Like, it's a whole like trickle down chain. Brown doesn't give them the quality minutes that he did. Maybe Nick Claxton plays less. Like, they get fewer contributions from the guys that play well. And maybe the offense is just too much, but you have to be willing to say that you have to throw out that series and just be like, the Nets are going to score 120 points per 100. They're going to score like 1.2 points per possession, and nothing can stop them, not even the Bucks defense, and the Bucks can't keep up. That's a fine approach. But if you're going to go that route, I do think you got to acknowledge that their defense is unlikely to repeat what they did in that Bucks series.
I think even going that route, like even throwing out the previous series, imagining a healthy Brooklyn Nets team, the supernova that is that team offensively, I think it's a little bit too much for largely anybody to contain, which is why
they can't get stopped, Jackson. This team can't get stops. And you also need to factor in also, I know Drew Holiday is going to play. I know Drew Holiday is going to be there. I know Drew Holiday will probably be vaccinated. I know Drew Holiday is going to be available. I know Drew Holiday is not going to go on a vision quest. Like, I know
hey, all these little, disclaimers that factors into health. All right. Those are all health subsection, like, no Kyrie-cations, whatever we're going to call those. Anyways, I will say one of my, when I was originally having this debate with myself, I was also looking at Drew Holiday's numbers from the series, which Drew Holiday struggled in this series. And I did kind of think that even, minus the whole Kyrie Harden situation, Had Drew Holiday played a slightly better series, I mean, he averaged 36% from the floor, 26% from three, only 15 points a game. He really struggled across the 7 games. I really thought that if he had, stepped up, played a little bit more towards his like average level and not struggled, at least with his efficiency as badly as he did in the series. And there were a couple games too, where Chris Middleton had some really rough games. The opening game, if memory serves, was really terribly inefficient game for him. Maybe a few things break a little bit differently and the series doesn't go 7, right? And they manhandle the injury plagued Brooklyn Nets. And we're not even having this debate currently, right? But KD went supernova. Their defense stepped up in a big way. And so then now we're having this constant back and forth of, if they had one of the other two, if they had both of them, then they would have just waxed the floor with the Bucks. But I think you're right. You're completely right to view it in a completely different light. If we're talking about a healthy Brooklyn Nets team and to throw out this previous series, because you're right, it wouldn't be the same series. All that still said, if I'm still basing myself on the premise of this Bucks team stacked up in the Eastern Conference against a healthy Nets team, I can't buy them because I don't think they get through the Nets team.
That's fine.
Which means I don't think
I think I'm holding. I'm going to hold. I think if we look at just like how this has gone for the Bucks, like the regular season, they've proven they're going to. My only concern with them, honestly, is the short off season. And Drew and Chris played in the Olympics. That's really my only concern here. Their depth is not as good as it used to be. I don't really think that losing PJ Tucker is a huge deal. I really don't. I think, I think the Grayson Allen addition is actually probably pretty good for them. In general, I think that they're going to be a 55-win team. I think they're going to be right there. I think they're going to look good in the regular season. I think they'll probably be better in the playoffs than they have been. At least I hope so, because it's very stressful when I'm like, they should make more shots and they just don't. That's very stressful for someone like me that digs as deep as I do into this stuff. I think if we look at kind of like some of these games that they had, like they just simply had so many performances that were absolutely horrific. Like that one terrible game that they had in that series, like they had one of the worst differentials between expected effective field goal percentage and actual in like NBA playoff history going back to like the last 15 years. So it was pretty rough for them. And there's still questions, but I'm going to hold. I think that Giannis was a monster and kept carrying them. And yeah, the Nets had injuries and the Nets, are still going to be a really great team and they're the favorites. I think they should be. I think the Bucks are there. And so I'm going to hold on the Bucks.
That's kind of where I was at, is I was on the fence between selling and holding. And I think after our thorough discussion, I'm going to stick with holding as well for the Bucks, which brings us, we're going to have 4 other teams to dive into once we get to the other side. But first, a quick message from our friends over at Built Bar, because if you've never had a protein bar that you've actually enjoyed, that you've tasted and you thought, wow, this is actually a delicious protein bar, right? It's not gritty. It's not chalky like other protein bars on the market. They've got so many great flavors to choose from. Mint chocolate brownie, double chocolate. Matt, your favorite, the strawberry. Am I right?
Yeah, big fan of strawberry over here.
Cookies and cream, another good one. My personal favorite, coconut brownie chunk. Really can't go wrong with a single flavor on their menu. Every single bar is low cal, low sugar, high protein, high fiber. Great if you're on a keto diet. Great if you're trying to lose weight. And you can check them out. Just go to built.com and use promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off your very next order. Again, that's promo code LOCK15 when you visit built.com.
We're also brought to you today by Bet Online, which is back and better than ever as all eyes are on the gridiron. Teams are back to start another football season. As always, Bet Online is your number one spot for all the pro and college football action this season. They've got a new updated site and interface. They've got more odds, more props, more contests. BetOnline.ag continues to be the number one source for everything football. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 100% welcome bonus. That's double your initial deposit just for signing up using promo code NFL100. From football, basketball, boxing, right to your favorite Vegas casino games, don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. Bet Online, the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports. Bet Online, your online sportsbook experts. We'll be right back on Locked On NBA.
And final segment here at Locked On NBA Thursday as we dive into our remaining 4 teams from the Central Division. And up first, we have the Indiana Pacers, the new Rick Carlisle-led Indiana Pacers. And frankly, this is the team that I was, as soon as I was canvassing this division, Matt, and I was like, okay, who am I buying? Saw the Pacers and was immediately like, yep, buying Pacers immediately.
I think you got to. I just think this roster's been good. We've seen this roster be good periodically. They get hurt. They've had bad injury luck the last 2 seasons. They have an all-star in Domantas Sabonis. They've got a defensive player of the year candidate in Miles Turner. They've got a quality point guard in Malcolm Brogdon. The coaching upgrade is significant. I have some concerns.
They've got the greatest player of all time in Karis LeVert, as would,
Sure.
NBA Twitter and trade machine experts tell you via the missed out opportunities for the Houston Rockets and the James Harden sweepstakes. I'm just going to throw that one out there.
I'm very glad that you're still so bitter about that entire experience. That's great. Yeah, so a good player in Karis LeVert. They've got pretty good depth. I like the additions that they've made with the draft and everything. This team just looks like it's going to be pretty good, and their expectations, I think, are pretty low. I think that's the thing is, if we're doing like a stock market report, like their earnings potential is supposed to be pretty mediocre, and I think they could be pretty solid. So I think they're going to produce probably above. So I'm with you. I'm buying on the Indiana Pacers.
Where do we have them pegged? Like, I have them somewhere comfortably, like in that, I want to say like that 5 to 7 range in the East is kind of what I'm predicting. I think they're going to jump clear out of the play-in, honestly.
Right now, I have them in the play-in, but I have them probably, I think there's going to be a separation between the 7 and 8 and like the 9 and 10. So I think the Pacers will probably have home court in the play-in and will be probably like, I think they'll wind up with like the 7th. I think that's
the top play-in spot. Okay.
Yeah, the top play-in spot.
Okay, so that's kind of the bottom end of where I have them in that 5-7 bracket range. Okay, all right, cool. I like that. Now, again, I'm big fan of Rick Carlisle. Obviously, a very excellent coach. He's gonna get the best out of that roster, I think. As long as barring health. So, and that's the big thing for them. Let's go into our next team, who I love. I love what the Chicago Bulls are trying to put together here. And I feel like they just kind of like. I feel like they kind of Frankensteined a team together in like 6 months flat, like with the Vucevic acquisition and then, ahead of the deadline. And then now adding in DeMar DeRozan, Lonzo Ball, Alex Caruso, like this Bulls team. I was on the fence about like selling or holding them because I'm not confident in it. Because I want to see it play out first is the problem. And I have a lot of reservations about how this team is actually going to do, because like I went back and looked at like, okay, what their record was the end of the season after they acquired Vucevic. I think they went like 12-14, but Zach LaVine missed a lot of time during that stretch. When he did come back for a little 5-game stint, they went 4-1, but it was tail end of the season. Teams are resting guys, that kind of thing. But even on the season, the Bulls were like, had a losing record when Zach LaVine played still. So, you're bringing in a proven veteran in DeMar DeRozan who's going to help shore things up the wings. I like what Lonzo Ball brings to the table. He's going to take a lot of the pressure off of Zach LaVine, both, having to create everything offensively as well as not having to check the opposing best guard every single night. Like there's going to be a lot of help for LaVine and Vucevic now. I just don't know if it's enough in the Eastern Conference. I think they'll be a play-in team, but I kind of still want to hold on them.
I'm buying. Give me all the Bull stock. Buying. I want it all. Give me more Bull stock. I want all of it. I have decided that the Bulls are this team that basically they're like a Rorschach test. Okay, everybody's gonna see something different when they look at this team, and I love it because there are so many people that look at this like, how's this team going to be good? How on earth is... No, they're like a play-in at best. They're going to fall on their face. And then people that buy in are like, this team could wind up being like a 50-win team. Like, I think this team could actually be really good and be like in like at, a 4, 5, 6 seed in the Eastern Conference if the Sixers fall off with the Simmons stuff. Here's how I would put it. The numbers for Vucevic, this was wild to me. Do you know what their defensive rating was when their team fell off the map after the All-Star break, after the trade?
Off the top of my head, no.
What do you guess? Guess the defensive rating.
1.
No, like rank. Give me a rank.
Oh, okay. I was like, okay, rank. Bottom 5?
8th.
8th?
8th.
Okay, what was their offense then?
Terrible, because Zach LaVine got COVID. Like, this is what's crazy. That's what happened. They played terribly in the first handful of games because they were playing dynamite teams. They played a really brutal schedule right after the trade. LaVine and Vucevic didn't know how to play together. LaVine gets COVID. He's out. They have no one else to create offense. And so they bottom out there. But defensively, it was working, which takes me to my major point. I think Billy Donovan is such a good coach defensively that he's going to be able to manage a drop scheme with this team that's going to be able to get them regular season wins. I'm fading this team in the playoffs. They're not going anywhere. They're a first round out. I'm not taking this team anywhere in the playoffs. You can't play how they do with the personnel that they have and survive a playoff series. But in the regular season, you have two primary on-ball creators. DeMar DeRozan was the second most efficient creator out of pick and roll last season behind Kawhi Leonard, minimum 500 possessions. The list was literally Kawhi and then DeMar creating out of pick and roll. And DeMar was doing this with Keldon Johnson, Derek White, DeJounte Murray, and Jakob Poeltl. Come on now. LaVine was absolutely phenomenal last season. I'm fine if people want to say that they expect some regression there. I choose to believe in Zach LaVine. I've never been a Lonzo Ball guy, but if you tell me he's going to be the third off-ball creator who just has to knock down some spot-up shots, and play help defense and not primary on ball, that is the perfect role. If you're going to build a drop scheme, DeRozan and LaVine are going to get killed on the screens. Vucevic can play pretty well in drop coverage. He did it in Orlando. Orlando had a top 10 defense multiple years with Vucevic at center because he's really good at drop. In that situation, you need great help defenders. Lonzo Ball, Alex Caruso, Patrick Williams, great help defenders. I don't think they're going to be awesome defensively. I think they're going to wind up 15th to 17th, but I think they're going to be top 10 in offense. I think this team is going to be really good. I think this team is going to be outside of the play-in. I think they're going to surprise people. I believe in the Bulls.
Is this your sleeper Eastern Conference team that's going to make a jump?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I can respect it. I'm still tentative on it. It still feels like such a weird amalgamation of players to me on the surface. But for the reasons that you outlined, I'm a little bit more optimistic about their chances. But I'm going to stick.
Don't let me talk you into this. Don't join me on the ledge, Jackson.
No,
stay inside.
No. It's okay. I've got a rope wrapped around you, and I'm back inside, safely, in the doorway to the living room as you're preparing to take the free fall off the Chicago Bulls ledge. So with that, I'm still holding on the Bulls. Let's go into our next team. We got two more here to get to. Cleveland Cavaliers. So with our last two teams here are obviously two teams that were at the top of the lottery this past season with the Cavaliers and the Pistons. With the Cavs, I feel like any offseason in which you're able to add a top prospect is a successful offseason. So bringing in Evan Mobley, great. The Markkanen bit kind of confused me because they also then re-upped on Jarrett Allen. And so now you've got Jarrett Allen, Lauri Markkanen, and Evan Mobley are your bigs of the future. And that's not a terrible front court to have, but I'm intrigued by it, I guess, is what I'm going to sit with. I kind of just imagined that. Sorry, I'll let you go. I'll let you go ahead.
No, you're fine.
Well, I was just kind of thinking, as far as balancing the minutes distribution for those guys, I guess it kind of works. Those are three guys where you can slot any three of them on the court at the same time and make it work. There's a lot of switchability between them. So I'm not completely against it. It was more so just random out of anything, I guess. But taking a shot at Lauri Markkanen, okay, 4 years, $70 million, not the end of the world. But their one offseason move that didn't make a whole lot of sense to me was adding, Rubio. That was kind of I guess he's just going to sit there behind Sexton and Garland on the bench, or if they're actually planning to get him consistent minutes or something. I kind of just want to short the Cavaliers. That's kind of where I'm at with them.
I'm with you. Let's short them. The expectations, their line is 25.5. They're supposed to basically be a bad team that's actually kind of decent. I don't think they're going to be decent. I think there's a good chance Colin Sexton gets traded. That's been floating around. They've been trying to find a deal for that for about a year now. Kevin Love's still taking up space. The three center approach, I think probably they'll figure out the two of the three work eventually. But in the short term, that means the other one's probably going to be really bad, whether it's Markkanen, Allen, or Mobley, Allen, or Mobley, Markkanen. Two of those is probably not going to work together. I like Evan Mobley long-term, but I think it takes him a season to get acclimated. I think Isaac Okoro looks better this season, but still doesn't have enough offense. I like Darius Garland a lot, but I don't see him making a leap. I don't know who gets this team to be significantly better. I really want good things for JB Bickerstaff. I really want to see him be successful. His teams have gone under every single season he's coached. I hate that, but it's true. So I have to short this team. They're the only team in the division I can really look at and say is going to perform worse than expectations. I think their expectations for them being decent are too much. They're going to be another tank team.
Unfortunately so for the Cavaliers. But hey, that means hopefully one more year of a top pick, right? That's the silver lining.
Last one, your favorite team, Rockets fans' favorite team, the Detroit Pistons. Good stuff here.
The beef between Rockets and Pistons fans is going to be something for years to come. But that said, I'm a good sport about it. I'm buying Pistons. I like I like the direction that they're going. I like what Troy Weaver's doing with the organization. I like the additions that he's made. Shout out to Rockets legend Kelly Olynyk, who they brought in this past offseason, who's going to be, a great addition to their front court. Very versatile big, knows exactly how to play with others, get others involved. Just a really, really smart guy. His playmaking ability was something that I didn't really know was in his bag until watching him, up close as a Houston Rocket this past season. Obviously, you come away with the number one pick in the draft and the number one prospect in the draft in Cade Cunningham. It, bodes well. Luka Garza impressed in Summer League, looked really good there. I like what this team's doing. And frankly, they finished 20-52 this past season. How can you not expect them to improve upon that? They're going to improve upon that. I'm probably expecting them to finish somewhere in the 25-30 win range in the Eastern Conference.
Nope, I'm selling. Who's good on this team? Who's good on this team? Jeremy Grant that put up numbers last year.
Cade Cunningham, Jeremy Grant, Killian Hayes, Kelly Olynyk.
Is Killian Hayes good? Is Killian Hayes good?
I think Killian Hayes.
I like Killian Hayes as a defensive counterpart to Cade. I like that combo, but that's not going to win games. They're too young.
I think you're a little too low on Cade.
Okay. I think Cade is going to be a transformational franchise player. I think Cade is a guy that has more, what he brings is impact over production. And at some point, just to get started, you have to have production. They don't have guys that can score. They don't have guys that can defend. They don't have guys that can rebound. They don't have shooters. If Cade, one of Cade's best things is he's a wonderful passer. Who's he passing to? Sadiq Bey? Jeremy Grant likes to play on ball, right? That's his whole thing is he went there being I'm going to play on ball and I'm going to prove I'm so much more than this 3D spot up shooter with Denver. And then he put up a lot of numbers and the team was horrible. They lost Mason Plumlee, and that feels like a big loss. That's concerning.
I think it does depend on how heliocentric the offense is around Cade Cunningham, right? If there are opportunities for other guys to have their hands on the ball, be it Kelly Olynyk creating for others, be it Jeremy Grant running some of the action at times, then if Cade gets a few opportunities here and there to just be a spot-up shooter, right, to make some shots, I think he's a guy that can make shots. I think they've got enough guys to make enough shots, but I hear what you're saying. Yeah,
you need Cade to create the offense for everybody else and be the tip of the spear, and he can't do both.
That's what I'm saying is he's going to create a lot of the offense for others, but I think there are enough tools on that roster that can also help create some offense and some easy opportunities for Cade. He's not going to be the one that has to do all of it, is kind of what I'm getting at. It's not going to be ball in his hands literally every moment of every second he's on the court.
But I think that's worse. I think the ball not being in his hands means all of your other opportunities are lower. Your expected value per play goes down because he's so good, but he also can't do everything because he needs to do all the other things as well. He can't pass to himself is pretty much my problem. If you told me the Pistons had 5 Cade Cunninghams, I'd take the over.
What was Cleveland's record there in LeBron's rookie season? Is that what we're looking at basically, more or less?
It's a pretty high bar though, and they missed the playoffs and were pretty bad if I recall. You mentioned Olynyk. I do think that the bench is going to be as a guy that does a lot of betting, I'm going to be betting Pistons second quarters because Corey Joseph, Kelly Olynyk are going to tear up teams with dribble handoff stuff. I think their bench unit is going to probably have a better net rating than their starters, just because they're going so young. Young teams don't typically win. If they do, it's because they have guys like Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, and James Harden. This team does not have Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, and James Harden. So I'm selling on the Pistons.
And you know what? That's fair. I'm just like earlier. I'm not gonna be able to talk you into buying them. I find it hard pressed to imagine that they're going to be this bad another season in a row with the talent that they added. Like even for the reasons that you outlined, I think they can easily pick up another 5 or so wins. And I still like I like the direction that the franchise or that the moves that they've made, which is why I'm buying them. So
if Bay makes a jump, if Hayes makes a jump, because like I liked Hayes a lot coming out as a prospect, and he was hurt a lot of last year. If Grant is willing to take kind of a step back, like this is one of my big questions is just what does like Grant sign this big deal?
Where does Grant fit in?
Yeah, that's a really weird situation to me. They're like this young team, and then there's Jeremy Grant just doing stuff.
Just hi, what's up?
Hi. So look, Isaiah Stewart looks like there's a lot of promising figures for him. Like there's a lot of guys that if they make a leap, I'm wrong. I just, at this point, I'm going to approach it with you're going to have to show me before I buy in.
All right. That's fair. And that wraps up our NBA stock market central division. Any parting thoughts on this one, Matt?
Sorry this took so long. But, we had a lot of stuff we had to get to today. We had a lot of stuff we had to get to today. I liked your takes the other day. I like that we disagreed on so many, and this is gonna be fun to go back in a couple months and look at and be like, Matt, what were you thinking? Why did you take the Bulls? Why did you buy the Bulls? What were you thinking? I'm excited for that look back here in a few months.
I know. I'm excited to be dead wrong on all my takes. I've said it before. I'll say it again. My favorite meal is crow. I love being wrong.
That's a great catchphrase, Jackson.
All right. With that, we always appreciate you tuning in, watching the show. If you haven't done so, please subscribe to the Locked On NBA YouTube channel. If you haven't done that yet, we would sincerely appreciate it. Also, wherever you listen to your podcast, be it Apple, Spotify, Google, the brand new Odyssey app, free and available. This podcast, Locked On NBA, free and available on any platform you can imagine. Check out Matt's work for the Action Network, as well as Locked On Nuggets, wherever you listen to your podcast. You can check out my work over at Locked On Rockets if you so care to see what's going on with Jalen Green and all things Clutch City. But for today's episode, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On NBA Thursday.
Oh.